A young man bursts from an airport terminal, backpack bouncing, eyes wide with terror. He doesn't stop, doesn't look back. It's as if someone is chasing him, though no one can be seen. He sprints across the tarmac, vaults a fence, and disappears into the thick line of trees beyond. This was a normal summer day in Bulgaria, until Lars Mittank vanished. No phone, no wallet, no belongings. Just gone. In the days before, he had sent strange, fearful messages to his family. This is the final moment Lars was ever seen, captured forever on a single grainy frame. Welcome to Vanished Echoes, the place where the missing leave behind only questions and silence. Every story you hear is real, every disappearance unsolved. We search the shadows of true events, piecing together the final moments before someone slips away into the unknown. Lars Joachim Mittank was born on February 9th, 1986 in Berlin, Germany. He grew up in a modest, tight-knit household where loyalty and family values were more than just words. They were a way of life. Lars was especially close to his father, who had faced serious health problems in recent years. Friends recall how Lars often rearranged his schedule to help his father during recovery, showing a quiet kind of devotion that few people his age possessed. Lars worked at a local power plant, a job that demanded focus and responsibility. Those who knew him best describe him as calm, dependable, and not one to seek the spotlight. He wasn't the kind of man to start trouble. In fact, most remembered him as someone who avoided it entirely. He liked a good laugh, but he was also reserved, a careful listener rather than a loud storyteller. Outside of work, Lars had a few passions: football, the outdoors, and traveling when time allowed. He was an avid supporter of Werder Bremen and could often be found watching matches with friends over a beer. When he wasn't working or spending time with family, Lars enjoyed short trips across Europe, always on a budget but making the most of every adventure. In the summer of 2014, Lars and a group of close friends decided to take a holiday to Bulgaria's Golden Sands Resort, a popular destination for young travelers looking for sun, nightlife, and low prices. It was the perfect opportunity to relax, swim in the Black Sea, and enjoy a few nights out without spending a fortune. Friends say the first few days of the trip went exactly as planned: mornings on the beach, afternoons exploring the local area, evenings in the resort bars. Lars seemed relaxed and happy, laughing in photos, walking through the bustling streets of Varna, and soaking in the summer heat. Nothing in his behavior suggested trouble was brewing. But beneath the surface, something was about to shift. On the fourth night of the trip, Lars became involved in a minor disagreement at a fast food restaurant. Accounts vary on exactly what sparked it. Some say it was over football team rivalries, others that it was simply a misunderstanding. Whatever the cause, it ended quickly and without serious injury. Yet, according to his friends, Lars began acting differently afterward, quieter, more withdrawn, and unusually anxious. This subtle change was the first in a chain of events that would lead to one of the most puzzling disappearances Europe has ever seen. The holiday began exactly as Lars and his friends had hoped: mornings on Bulgaria's warm beaches, afternoons wandering along the coastline, and long nights in the crowded bars of Golden Sands. The sea breeze carried music and laughter, and for a few days, life felt uncomplicated. But on one of those nights, the easy atmosphere changed. At a small fast food restaurant near the resort, Lars found himself in an argument with several men over a football match, Germany versus Bulgaria. It started with taunts about teams, but tensions quickly rose. Witnesses say the group became aggressive, and in the scuffle that followed, Lars was punched in the side of the head. The pain was immediate. The next day, Lars visited a local doctor who diagnosed him with a perforated eardrum. It was a painful but treatable injury, one that came with the strict warning he should not fly until it healed. The pressure changes during a flight could make the damage worse, possibly permanent. This meant Lars had to make an unexpected choice. While his friends packed up and prepared to fly home at the end of their holiday, he would stay behind, alone, until he was cleared to travel. He moved out of the main resort and into a cheaper hotel in Varna, telling his friends he'd be fine. But then his behavior began to change. Shortly after his friends left, Lars called his mother in Germany. His voice was tense, hurried. He told her that he didn't feel safe, that strange men were following him. He didn't explain why or who they might be. Then he made a request that chilled her. "Please, cancel my bank cards, now." She asked what was going on, but Lars wouldn't say more. Instead, he promised to call her back. Over the next day, the calls continued, each one more frantic than the last. Sometimes he whispered, other times he spoke so fast it was hard to follow. Always, there was that same fear in his voice. From hundreds of miles away, his mother could only listen and wonder, was this paranoia brought on by the stress of his injury, or was someone truly watching him? Either way, the Lars she knew, calm, grounded, and in control, was gone. And the man who had taken his place was scared, desperately scared.
July 8, 2014, Varna, Bulgaria. For almost a week, Lars Mittank had been alone in a foreign country, recovering from a head injury, living in a budget hotel far from the lively Golden Sands resort where his holiday began. His calls to his mother had grown increasingly strange, filled with fear, but then on details. That morning, Lars had one goal: get home to Germany. He arrived at Varna Airport carrying his backpack and rolling a small suitcase. CCTV footage shows him walking through the terminal, head slightly down as though trying to avoid eye contact. On the surface, he appeared calm. But soon, something happened that shifted the tone of the day entirely. Before boarding, Lars was required to visit the airport's medical office, a routine check to ensure his injured ear was fit for the short flight to Berlin. The doctor on duty later described Lars as nervous and restless. He kept glancing at the door, as if expecting someone to walk in at any moment. In the middle of the examination, Lars took out his phone and made another call to his mother. This time, his voice was barely above a whisper. "I don't want to talk here," he told her. "I'll explain later." She pressed him for details, but Lars cut the call short. Whatever was troubling him, he was unwilling to say. Not over the phone, not in that room. Then, without warning, something triggered a sudden burst of panic. Witnesses say he stood up quickly, muttered something about not wanting to die there, and bolted from the office. The security camera outside the medical room catches the moment. Lars rushes into the corridor, moving fast. In one hand, he still clutches his backpack. His suitcase is left behind, abandoned where he dropped it. The camera then cuts to the main airport exit. Lars bursts through the sliding glass doors and into the bright summer daylight. The camera follows him as he runs past startled travelers, through the parking lot, and towards the airport's outer perimeter. What happens next feels almost surreal. Lars reaches a tall wire fence, hesitates for barely a second, then climbs it with surprising speed. On the other side lies an open grassy area that quickly gives way to a patch of overgrown field and scattered trees. Without looking back, he sprints into the greenery and disappears from view. That was the last confirmed sighting of Lars Mittank. In the days that followed, local authorities, search teams, and volunteers combed the surrounding area. They searched ditches, fields, and forest edges. They questioned taxi drivers, farmers, and airport staff. But there was no trace, no clothing, no backpack, no body. It was as if Lars had simply vanished into the landscape. The only clues were the belongings he had left behind in the airport: his suitcase containing clothes, personal items, and his wallet. Nothing was missing, except for the man himself. His mother, Sandra, flew to Bulgaria to join the search. She retraced his steps, spoke to the last people who saw him, and even walked through the field where he was last seen. For her, the images from the CCTV were haunting, each frame showing her son in flight, but offering no explanation for what he was running from. Some theories emerged. One suggested that Lars suffered a sudden psychological break, possibly triggered by a combination of his head injury, isolation, and stress. The perforated eardrum, paired with possible concussion symptoms, might have caused paranoia or disorientation. Under this theory, Lars wasn't fleeing a real threat, only one his mind had created. Another theory claimed the threat was real. Could the men from the football altercation have followed him? Was there an attempted robbery or attack that never made it to police reports? Witnesses in the hotel had mentioned strangers asking about him. To some, this hinted at something darker. Then there was the unsettling possibility of human trafficking or organized crime. Varna, like many port cities, has documented cases of people disappearing under suspicious circumstances, but no evidence has ever linked Lars to such a fate. As the weeks turned into months, the case grew cold. No bank activity, no verified sightings, no ransom demands. For the investigators, it was as if Lars had run straight into a void. His mother, however, never stopped searching. She appeared in interviews, on missing persons programs, and across social media, hoping that someone, somewhere, had seen him. In each appearance, she described the same young man, 6 feet tall, athletic build, sandy hair, wearing a yellow t-shirt, shorts, and sneakers on the day he vanished. She also described the last words she heard from him, the whisper over the phone that still echoed in her mind. "I'll explain later." But later never came. And so, the world is left with just minutes of grainy CCTV footage, a man running, crossing a fence, and fading into the distance. We don't see what he saw. We don't know who, if anyone, was behind him. We only know that from the moment Lars Mittank entered that field, he was gone, and has remained gone for more than a decade. Whatever happened on that summer day, one fact is undeniable. People don't just vanish. Someone, somewhere, knows the truth. The question is, will it ever be found?
In the hours after Lars Mittank vanished from Varna airport, the Bulgarian police moved quickly. Officers and airport security scoured the immediate perimeter, searching the parking lot, service roads, and the overgrown field into which he had run. They expected to find him within minutes, perhaps shaken, maybe injured, but alive. He wasn't there. Over the next several days, the search expanded. Uniformed officers, detectives, and volunteer rescue teams combed the surrounding fields and patches of woodland. They moved in slow, tight lines, scanning the tall grass for any sign of clothing, a footprint, a discarded bag. The summer heat was punishing, and the terrain made visibility difficult. Yet they found nothing. Not a shoe, not a t-shirt, not even the small backpack Lars was carrying when he fled the airport. It was as if the moment he vanished into the trees, he ceased to exist in the physical world. The absence of evidence was troubling. If Lars had been injured and collapsed nearby, the search teams should have found him within hours. If he had wandered off in confusion, local farmers, drivers, or pedestrians might have seen him, but no one came forward with a clear, verifiable sighting. Still, whispers began to circulate. Some locals claimed they'd seen a tall, blond man walking along a rural road miles from the airport. Others said a stranger had been spotted near a gas station, appearing disoriented. But none of these accounts could be confirmed. No CCTV footage matched. No eyewitness could positively identify Lars. And critically, there was no way to prove any of these men were him at all. For Lars's family, every rumor was a double-edged sword, a flicker of hope followed by frustration.
His mother, Sandra, traveled to Bulgaria to join the search. She met with police, retraced her son's final movements, and even walked the exact route he had taken through the airport. Standing in the parking lot, she tried to imagine what could have driven him to climb that fence and vanish into the fields. The police investigated multiple possibilities. Could Lars have been hiding from someone? If so, who? Could he have been suffering from a sudden psychological episode, paranoia brought on by head trauma, medication, or even dehydration? The medical examination records from the airport suggested nothing life-threatening, but his behavior told a different story. The fight at the resort days earlier loomed over the investigation. Was it truly just a minor altercation over a football match, or had it escalated into something more dangerous? The doctor who treated Lars's ear injury advised against flying, a precaution that kept him in Bulgaria alone, separated from his friends and familiar surroundings. That extra time alone may have amplified his fears. Despite extensive efforts, the official search began winding down after the first week. Without leads, the case entered a frustrating limbo. Bulgarian police left the file open but scaled back active patrols. Interpol added Lars to their missing persons database, circulating his photo across Europe. Back in Germany, the story spread quickly through newspapers, TV, and eventually online forums. The CCTV footage of Lars sprinting out of the airport became infamous, a haunting, unexplained moment frozen in time. Amateur sleuths dissected every second of the video, his body language, the direction of his gaze, the way he ran as if his life depended on it. Some claimed to see signs of terror in his face. Others argued he looked more determined than panicked, as though he had a specific destination in mind. The online discussions fueled even more theories. One group believed Lars had gone into hiding voluntarily, escaping an unknown threat. Another suspected he'd suffered a medical emergency in the field and was never found. And then there were those convinced he had met with foul play, perhaps abducted moments after leaving the airport's cameras. For Lars's family, every reported sighting was a double-edged sword, a flicker of hope followed by frustration. She organized awareness campaigns, spoke at conferences on missing persons, and even worked closely with both German and Bulgarian authorities. Each new reported sighting, whether in Bulgaria, Romania, or even as far as Canada, was investigated. Every time it ended the same way, another dead end. Years later, the case remains one of Europe's most baffling modern disappearances. There was no crime scene, no proven trail, and no closure for the family left behind. The last factual, confirmed moment of Lars Mittank's life remains those few minutes at Varna Airport, walking into a medical office, then running out as if chased by an invisible force. For the people who knew him, that's the most painful part. They remembered the quiet, dependable young man who cared for his recovering father, who laughed easily with friends, and who had never before shown signs of paranoia or instability. Seeing him run that day feels like watching a stranger, yet knowing deep down it was him. The fields outside Varna hold their silence. The CCTV footage holds its questions, and the family of Lars Mittank continues to hold on to hope. Hope that somewhere, somehow, a piece of the puzzle will surface and the search will finally end. With no confirmed sightings of Lars Mittank after July 8, 2014, and no physical evidence emerging from the search, investigators and the public have been left with only theories. None are proven, but each carries its own unsettling logic. And each, in its own way, could explain the haunting images of Lars's final moments at Varna Airport. The first and perhaps most medically grounded theory is that Lars was experiencing a severe physical or neurological crisis, possibly triggered by his ear injury. The fight days earlier had left him with a perforated eardrum, While painful, this injury on its own is rarely life-threatening. But combined with possible head trauma, like a mild concussion, it could have led to disorientation, paranoia, or sudden mood swings. Medical studies have shown that concussions can cause heightened anxiety, irrational fears, and a fight-or-flight response that feels uncontrollable to the sufferer. Add to this the strong antibiotics or other medications he might have been prescribed, and his mental state could have shifted dramatically. This theory neatly explains his strange phone calls to his mother, whispering about people following him, asking her to cancel his bank cards. In his mind, he may have genuinely believed he was in danger, even if no one was after him. But here's the problem. Even if Lars had a sudden psychological break or became confused, it doesn't explain the complete disappearance. People in a medical crisis often collapse, wander into populated areas, or are eventually found, sometimes even by accident. Yet in this case, no trace was ever located. If this was purely medical, it would mean that Lars either succumbed to the elements somewhere beyond the search area or encountered another, more sinister fate after leaving the airport grounds. The second theory is darker, that Lars was the victim of a criminal act. Some point to the bar fight days earlier between German and Bulgarian football fans. Was it really just a drunken scuffle, or did it attract the attention of dangerous individuals? If someone wanted revenge, to extort money, or to silence him for reasons unknown, keeping him in Bulgaria alone gave them the perfect opportunity. When his friends flew home, Lars was suddenly isolated. A foreigner with an injury, staying in a budget hotel far from his support network. Human trafficking and organized crime rings do operate in parts of Eastern Europe, particularly targeting vulnerable travelers. If Lars had been approached or threatened in the days after the fight, it might explain why he was afraid to speak openly in the airport doctor's office, why he whispered to his mother that he'd explain later. In this scenario, the moment he ran from the airport could have been the result of spotting someone or believing he spotted someone connected to the threat. Critics of this theory point out the lack of evidence. There were no known suspects, no CCTV footage showing him being chased, and no confirmed threats made to him prior to his disappearance. Bulgarian police could find no clear criminal lead tying his case to local gangs. Still, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. If someone had targeted him, they may have been skilled at avoiding detection, leaving nothing behind but a gap in the story where his life used to be. The third theory is that Lars vanished intentionally, that he made the decision to start over somewhere far from home. On paper, this idea seems far-fetched. By all accounts, Lars was deeply close to his family, particularly his mother, and was loyal to his friends. He held a steady job at a power plant. He had no history of running away, no mounting debts, no legal trouble. But those who argue for this theory suggest that sudden disappearances are often preceded by unseen personal crises, something he may have kept entirely to himself. In this version, the bar fight and ear injury were unrelated to the larger decision. Instead, they provided an unexpected opportunity, a few extra days alone in Bulgaria, away from prying eyes to make a clean break. Yet this theory struggles to explain two things. One, the panic at the airport. Voluntary disappearances tend to be methodical, but Lars's exit was chaotic, abandoning luggage, running without supplies, leaving behind his passport and wallet. Two, the lack of confirmed sightings. If Lars was alive and building a new life somewhere, he would need to avoid every modern surveillance and identification system for over a decade, a near impossible feat in the digital age. Still, the idea can't be entirely dismissed. Sometimes people vanish not because they are running from danger, but because they are running from themselves. There are, of course, more fringe possibilities, scenarios that blend elements of all three main theories. Some believe Lars may have suffered both a medical episode and an encounter with foul play, becoming disoriented from his injury and wandering into the path of someone with bad intentions. Others speculate about rare psychological conditions like transient global amnesia, which can cause sudden, profound memory loss and lead people to travel great distances without remembering who they are. A handful of online sleuths have even suggested that Lars became a victim of mistaken identity, targeted by someone who thought he was another man entirely. The frustrating truth is that without new evidence, every theory is both possible and impossible at the same time. The lack of physical proof means the case is wide open to interpretation and to haunting speculation. It has been more than a decade since the morning of July 8, 2014, when 28-year-old Lars Mittank sprinted out of Varna airport and vanished into the Bulgarian countryside. And in all that time, not a single confirmed trace of him has ever been found. Lars's last verified appearance remains those haunting CCTV frames, wearing a bright yellow t-shirt, a black shoulder bag swinging as he runs past startled passengers and airport staff. There are no photographs of him after that moment, no confirmed witness statements placing him in any nearby village or town, no bank withdrawals, no passport use. It is as if the moment he left the airport, he stepped into another world, one from which no messages, signals, or signs have ever returned. In the days and weeks after his disappearance, Bulgarian authorities organized searches through the open fields, dense undergrowth, and small farming plots surrounding the airport. Volunteers joined in. Helicopters scanned the terrain. Dogs were brought in to trace his scent. Nothing. Not a scrap of clothing, not his bag, not his phone, not even a shoe. As months passed, the official investigation slowed. Without leads or sightings, the case grew colder, the files growing dust on police shelves. The once active search grids became overgrown. Paths trodden by searchers were reclaimed by the forest. And with each passing season, the odds of finding a living Lars, or even his remains, seemed to shrink. Through it all, one voice has refused to go quiet. Lars's mother, Sandra. In interviews, she speaks of her son in the present tense, never saying was, always is. She recalls their last phone call, his fearful tone, and the promise he never got to keep. I'll explain later. She has traveled to Bulgaria multiple times, walking the same streets Lars walked, peering down dirt tracks, knocking on doors in nearby villages, showing his photograph to strangers who shake their heads with quiet sympathy. Every tip, no matter how improbable, is followed. A man resembling Lars spotted in a homeless shelter in Poland. Another seen working on a fishing boat in the Black Sea. A traveler swears they saw him hitchhiking in rural Romania. Each lead so far has ended in disappointment. But for Sandra, hope is not a choice. It is the only way forward. She says she will keep looking until she knows, with certainty, what happened to her son.
The mystery of Lars Mittank has transcended police reports and entered the strange realm of internet folklore. The airport footage has been shared millions of times on platforms from YouTube to Reddit, fueling endless theories and armchair investigations. Online sleuths dissect every frame, speculating about who or what he saw in the airport that made him flee. Some threads stretch into hundreds of comments, debating timelines, GPS coordinates, and witness credibility. Others take a more conspiratorial turn, weaving elaborate stories of espionage, criminal gangs, or shadowy medical experiments. While many of these discussions are rooted in genuine curiosity, they also highlight the unsettling truth. For most people who learn his story, Lars is not just a missing person, he's a symbol of how someone can simply vanish. Yet, beyond the theories and speculation lies a colder, quieter reality. Every year, the forest around Varna Airport grows a little thicker. The trails once marked by searchers are swallowed by weeds. Evidence that might have been obvious in those first critical days is now buried by soil, by time, by nature itself. The odds of solving this mystery without new, undeniable evidence are slim. Still, cases colder than this have cracked open decades later, sometimes by sheer accident. A hiker finding a lost backpack, a road crew unearthing a buried clue. Today, the file on Lars Mittank remains open in Bulgaria, officially unsolved. In Germany, his disappearance is still listed in national missing persons databases. His face remains frozen at 28 years old, on posters, on social media posts, in the minds of those who can't forget the sight of him running. If he is still out there, somewhere, he would now be in his late 30s. But the photo that searches for him will never age. For his family, and for the thousands who've been drawn into his story, this is not closure. This is limbo, a question mark in human form, walking, or perhaps no longer walking, somewhere beyond our reach. Until that question is answered, the mystery of Lars Mittank will remain exactly where it's been since that summer morning, caught between the last frame of a security camera and the first step into an uncharted void. One moment he was there, running for his life. The next, gone. In that split second between the airport doors and the field beyond, Lars Mittank crossed a line no one has been able to follow. What did he see that morning? Who or what was he running from? Share your theory in the comments. Someone, somewhere, might hold the missing piece, and you may be the one to notice it. This is Vanished Echoes, where some stories never end. Subscribe for more disappearances, more questions, and the haunting echoes they leave behind.